Greek mythology is more than ancient tales of gods and monsters. It's the spiritual framework of a civilization. These stories explained the stars, justified wars, warned against pride, and guided kings. Myths offered answers to life's biggest questions: where we come from, why we suffer, and how to live. These weren't just bedtime stories. They were religion, education, and history. Understanding Greek mythology is like holding a mirror to the ancient soul of the Western world. Greek mythology begins not with gods, but with nothing. The cosmos started as Chausa, vast, yawning void. From it emerged Gaia, the earth; Tartarus, the underworld abyss; Eros, the force of love and attraction; Nyx, the night; and Erebus, darkness itself. Gaia, powerful and fertile, gave birth to Uranus, the sky. Their union brought forth the Titans, the one-eyed Cyclopes, and the hundred-handed Hecatoncheires. But Uranus feared his children and locked them inside Gaia. Gaia, in pain, crafted a sickle from flint and gave it to her youngest Titan son, Cronus. He ambushed Uranus and castrated him, casting his remains into the sea. From the blood sprang the Furies, giants and ash tree nymphs, the Meliae. From the sea foam, Aphrodite emerged, goddess of beauty, desire, and eternal allure. This violent act set a recurring theme in Greek myth. Rebellion, succession, and divine vengeance passed from generation to generation. Cronus became king and ushered in the golden age, an era of peace, no suffering, no need for laws. But he, too, feared prophecy. Gaia warned that one of his children would dethrone him. To prevent this, Cronus swallowed each newborn: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. His sister wife Rhea grew desperate. When their sixth child was born, she tricked Cronus with a swaddled stone and secretly hid Zeus in a mountain cave. Zeus was raised in secret by nymphs and the goat Amalthea. Warriors known as the Coretes clashed their weapons to mask his cries. When he came of age, Zeus confronted Cronus and forced him to vomit up his siblings. Now united, the young gods prepared for battle. The Titano-Macetan years of war between Titans and Olympians shook the universe. The earth trembled, sky cracked, oceans boiled. The fate of creation hung in the balance. Victory came when Zeus freed the Cyclopes from Tartarus. In gratitude, they gifted divine weapons. Zeus received the thunderbolt, Poseidon the mighty trident, and Hades a helm of invisibility. The Hecatoncheires hurled mountains. With these allies, the Olympians triumphed. Cronus and the Titans were cast into Tartarus, bound in chains. A new order rose. Zeus ruled the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. The age of the Olympians had begun. Mount Olympus became the divine capital. 12 Olympians reigned: Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, Hermes, and either Hestia or Dionysus. Each god had distinct powers, symbols, temples, and sacred animals. Zeus wielded lightning and kept order. Hera governed marriage and childbirth. Poseidon ruled oceans and earthquakes. Athena, born fully armed from Zeus's forehead, embodied wisdom, justice, and warfare. The gods weren't perfect, they reflected the passions of mankind. Apollo, god of the sun, music, healing, and prophecy, inspired oracles and poets. His twin sister Artemis protected the wild and led the hunt. Ares personified raw violence, while Hephaestus forged divine weapons and machines. Hermes guided souls and messages. Aphrodite, born from sea foam, made mortals and gods fall madly in love. The Olympians quarreled, schemed, fell in love, and punished arrogance. Their stories were wild, complex, and endlessly human. But the divine world was larger than Olympus. Hades ruled the underworld not as a devil, but as a just king of the dead. Hestia tended hearths and home fires. Dionysus blurred sanity with madness, bringing wine and frenzy. Other ancient deities lingered. Nyx, the night herself, feared even by Zeus. Hecate, goddess of magic and crossroads. Every river, mountain, and breeze had its spirit. The Greeks lived surrounded by living myth. Religion in Greece wasn't about belief, it was about ritual. reciprocity, and respect. People built temples, offered sacrifices, and held festivals. Oracles, especially at Delphi, shaped history with cryptic visions. The Eleusinian mysteries promised secret truths and better afterlives. Worship was woven into every layer of Greek life: politics, farming, marriage. To dishonor the gods invited disaster. To respect them offered protection and favor. Greek mythology wasn't passive, it demanded participation. Prometheus, a titan who sided with Zeus in the war, became a friend to mankind. When humans were cold and vulnerable, Prometheus stole fire from Olympus and gave it to Athena, an act of rebellion and compassion. With fire came warmth, tools, and civilization. But Zeus viewed it as defiance. As punishment, Prometheus was chained to a mountain, where each day an eagle devoured his liver. Each night it regrew. His suffering became legendary. But Zeus's punishment didn't stop there. To punish humanity, he ordered the gods to create Pandora, the first woman. Each god gave her a gift: beauty, charm, music, curiosity. She was sent to earth with a sealed jar. When opened, it released every sorrow, disease, suffering, envy, death. Only hope remained inside. This myth explained human pain and offered one fragile virtue: endurance through hope. The world entered the Iron Age, marked by toil and hardship. Greek mythology describes 5 ages of man: golden, silver, bronze, heroic, and iron. In the Golden Age, humans lived peacefully under Cronus's rule. The Silver Age brought long lives but arrogance. The Bronze Age birthed warriors who destroyed themselves. The Heroic Age gave rise to demigods and noble deeds. Finally came the Iron Age, where suffering, war, and corruption dominate. The story of humankind was one of decline, from divine closeness to mortal struggle. Despite decline, heroes emerged. Perseus, aided by Athena and Hermes, beheaded Medusa, a gorgon whose gaze turned men to stone. With a mirrored shield and winged sandals, he struck her down and rescued Andromeda from a sea monster. Theseus braved the labyrinth of Crete, slaying the Minotaur with the help of Ariadne's thread. Bellerophon tamed Pegasus and killed the Chimera. These heroes walked the line between God and man, bravery and doom. Greek homes honored the hearth goddess Hestia daily, offering prayers and meals. City-states worshipped patron gods. Athens had Athena, Sparta had Ares. Temples dotted every landscape: grand stone columns, statues, sacred fires. Religion was both civic and personal. Even politics began with sacrifices to gain divine favor. Myth and worship were inseparable from daily life. People lived under the gaze of the gods, believing that their actions, piety or pride, would invite blessing or punishment from Olympus. Oracles played a crucial role in shaping Greek decisions. The most famous, the Oracle of Delphi, spoke through a priestess called the Pythia. Seated over a fissure releasing vapors, she delivered cryptic messages believed to be Apollo's voice. Kings, generals, and citizens consulted her before wars or marriages. Other sanctuaries existed, but Delphi was supreme. These utterances were not predictions, they were riddles demanding interpretation. One wrong reading could doom an army or a city forever. Greek rituals included sacrifices of animals, libations of wine and oil, and dramatic festivals. At the Dionysia, actors performed tragedies that honored Dionysius and explored fate, guilt, and the gods. Sacred games like the Olympics honored Zeus and showcased athletic excellence. Religion wasn't solemn, it was vibrant and loud. Music, feasting, and celebration mingled with awe and fear. The divine was always present on stage, in the sky, in statues, and deep inside human dreams and stories. One of mythology's most powerful tales is that of Prometheus, a titan who sided with mankind. He stole fire from Olympus to give to humans, symbolizing technology, survival, and thought. Zeus was furious. As punishment, Prometheus was chained to a remote cliff where an eagle devoured his liver each day. It regenerated by night. This eternal torture was not just revenge, it was a warning. Rebellion against divine order brings endless suffering, no matter how noble the cause. Prometheus's theft led to another consequence: Pandora. Zeus ordered the creation of the first woman, crafted by Hephaestus and gifted by all gods. She was beautiful and curious and carried a sealed jar. Warned never to open it, Pandora's curiosity overcame her. She lifted the lid, releasing disease, pain, and sorrow into the world. Only hope remained inside. This myth explained human suffering and warned against curiosity. Yet it also hinted that even in ruin, hope survives. Greek mythology divided human history into 5 ages: golden, silver, bronze, heroic, and iron. The golden age was perfectimans, lived like gods. The silver age was foolish and ended in ruin. The bronze age was violent and self-destructive. The heroic age birthed legends like Heracles and Perseus. The iron age, the present, was full of toil, injustice, and decline. These ages reflected nostalgia and moral decay, a belief that humanity moves ever further from the divine. Heroes were bridges between mortals and gods. Perseus, son of Zeus, beheaded Medusa using gifts from the gods: a reflective shield, winged sandals, and a magical satchel. He rescued Andromeda from a sea monster and founded dynasties. Theseus ventured into the labyrinth, slew the Minotaur, and unified Athens. Bellerophon tamed Pegasus and defeated the Chimera. These heroes represented virtue, strength, and cleverness, but also pride. Their successes often came at great cost, hinting at fate's cruel balance. Jason and the Argonauts sailed on a perilous journey to retrieve the Golden Fleece. With the help of Medea, a powerful sorceress who betrayed her own family, Jason succeeded. But he later abandoned her for a political marriage. In revenge, Medea killed their children, leaving Jason broken. This tale shows Greek myth's darkness. Even heroes fail, and love turns to destruction. Medea isn't just a villain, she's a warning that betrayal breeds consequences deeper than death or exile. Heracles, or Hercules, is the most famous Greek hero. Born from Zeus and a mortal woman, he was cursed by Hera with madness. In a fit of rage, he killed his wife and children. To atone, he performed 12 labors, slaying the Nemean lion, capturing the Cyrenian hind, cleaning the Aegean stables, and more. These labors pushed him beyond human limits. He was strength incarnate but haunted. His myth is one of redemption, endurance, and tragic heroism. Heracles' final labor took him to the underworld to capture Cerberus, the 3-headed hound guarding the dead. He succeeded, proving his might to gods and men. After death, Heracles was granted immortality and joined Olympus. His story shows the thin line between man and God, suffering and glory. Unlike other heroes, he achieved apotheosis, becoming divine. Yet even he bore scars. Heracles represents the hero's path, one of sacrifice, pain, triumph, and transformation beyond mortal understanding. The Trojan War began not with strategy, but vanity. Eris, goddess of discord, threw a golden apple inscribed, "To the fairest." Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed it. Paris of Troy was chosen to decide. He awarded it to Aphrodite, who promised him Helen, already married to Menelaus of Sparta. When Paris took her, the Greeks launched 1,000 ships. This myth explores pride, beauty, and the devastation caused by divine manipulation and human desire. The Greeks sailed to Troy with a mighty force. Heroes such as Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, and Agamemnon faced off against Troy's defenders, Hector, Aeneas, and Paris. Achilles, nearly invincible, was driven by rage and pride. His friend Patroclus was killed, which angered Achilles. Hector, the noblest warrior of Troy, fell at the hands of Achilles, who defiled his body. The gods watched, intervened, and took sides. The Iliad ends not with victory, but with the sorrow of war and the inevitability of death. The Greeks besieged Troy for 10 years. Heroes like Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, and Agamemnon clashed with Hector, Aeneas, and Priam's sons. Achilles, the fiercest warrior, fought for glory but withdrew after a dispute. His closest companion, Patroclus, died in battle. Enraged, Achilles returned, killed Hector, and desecrated his body. The Iliad ends not in victory but grief. Greek myth doesn't romanticize war, it exposes its futility, the fragility of honor, and the human cost of vengeance. The fall of Troy was due to deception. The Greeks pretended to retreat, leaving a wooden horse as a tribute. Warriors hid inside. Troy celebrated, dragged the horse inside the walls, and slept. That night, the Greeks climbed out of the wooden horse, opened the gates, and destroyed the city. Few heroes survived. Many were cursed. And from the ashes of Troy, new myths arose, of wandering survivors and the founding of distant civilizations. Odysseus's journey home took another 10 years. He encountered storms, shipwrecks, and monsters. He blinded the Cyclops Polyphemus, angering Poseidon. He resisted the song of the sirens, passed between Scylla and Charybdis, and was left with Circe and Calypso. Odysseus visited the underworld, where Achilles, after his death in the Trojan War, confessed to Odysseus that he would rather be a dead hero than a weightless slave. This epic, the Odyssey, is not about triumph. It is about endurance, about the titans of the time and the identity of the time. Afterwards, Odysseus returns wiser, older, changed forever. Penelope, Odysseus's wife, embodied patience and intelligence. Surrounded by suitors who believed her husband dead, she devised a ruse promising to choose a suitor after weaving a funeral shroud, which she secretly unraveled each night. After 20 years, Odysseus returned in disguise, tested loyalty, and revealed himself. He slaughtered the suitors and reclaimed his home. The Odyssey teaches that the journey matters as much as the destination. Loyalty, resilience, and cleverness prove as heroic as strength. The Greek underworld was ruled by Hades and structured with moral complexity. Souls crossed the river Styx, guided by Charon, if they had a coin for passage. Judges assigned them fates. The good went to Elysium. The average wandered the asphodel meadows. The wicked suffered in Tartarus. Tantalus starved with food forever out of reach. Sisyphus pushed a boulder endlessly. The underworld reflected Greek values: justice, punishment, and the soul's journey after death, neither heaven nor hell. Women in Greek mythology were not passive figures, they were powerful forces. Atalanta outran her suitors and fought in the Caledonian boar hunt. Medea used magic and intellect, exacting vengeance when betrayed. Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon for sacrificing their daughter. Penelope ruled with wisdom in Odysseus's absence. Goddesses like Athena, Artemis, and Aphrodite embodied wisdom, wilderness, and love. These stories reveal deep fears and reverence toward feminine power, both nurturing and destructive, capable of shaping destiny itself. As Greek society evolved, mythology became metaphor. Philosophers like Plato used myths to teach morals. The myth of in the Republic illustrated justice and reincarnation. Aristotle leaned toward logic and ethics, yet still respected myths' role in art. As critical thinking grew, literal belief declined, but the stories remained. They shifted from sacred tales to cultural memory, teaching lessons beyond religion: cautionary tales, heroic ideals, and eternal questions. Myth began to reflect human psychology and philosophy. As the Roman Empire rose, it adopted Greek myths, renaming gods but keeping their stories. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, Ares became Mars. Roman poets like Virgil adapted Homer's epics, linking Troy's fall to Rome's founding through Aeneas. Though culturally distinct, Romans revered Greek narratives, infusing them with their own values: order, empire, and duty. Myth evolved into national identity. Temples were built, rituals performed. The gods traveled westward, reshaped by empire, politics, and Latin verse. With Christianity's rise, pagan temples fell. Greek myths were condemned as false idols, yet they never vanished. They lived on in manuscripts, art, and poetry. During the Renaissance, artists revived these tales. Michelangelo sculpted gods, Shakespeare referenced heroes, and painters filled churches with classical imagery. In modern psychology, Freud named complexes after Oedipus. Jung saw myths as reflections of the collective unconscious. Mythology moved from sacred to symbolic, from religion to literature, psychology, and the core of Western imagination. Greek mythology shaped the structure of Western storytelling. The hero's journey, tragic flaws, divine tests all come from these tales. When we watch modern films or read epic novels, we echo myths of old. Stories like Icarus flying too close to the sun remind us of ambition's cost. Narcissus warns against self-obsession. These ancient narratives resonate because they deal with timeless emotions: love, pride, jealousy, grief, and pose eternal questions about power, purpose, and what it means to be human. To understand Greek mythology is to understand ourselves. In Zeus's thunder, we see authority. In Athena's wisdom, strategy. In Hera's vengeance, wounded pride. These characters are mirrors, divine yet flawed, immortal yet emotional. The gods and heroes of Greece weren't perfect. They were powerful representations of humanity's best and worst. These myths survive not just through memory, but through meaning. As long as humans tell stories, seek truth, or fall in love, the legacy of Greek mythology endures. Even the stars hold myths. The Greeks named constellations after legends: Orion, the hunter; Andromeda, the chained maiden; Perseus, her savior. These celestial stories help navigate both seas and life. Farmers planted by the stars. Poets found omens above. The sky became a divine canvas, connecting heaven and earth. Each night, the Greeks saw their stories glowing overhead, reminders of heroism, tragedy, and fate. The constellations immortalized their myths, casting tales across the cosmos for all to remember. Greek mythology also influenced ethics and justice. The concept of nemesis, divine retribution, taught that arrogance leads to downfall. Hubris was the ultimate sin. Oedipus, thinking he could outwit fate, fulfilled it. Myths warned that pride, even among kings, brings suffering. Justice wasn't only mortal law, but cosmic balance. Even gods weren't above punishment. These ideas shaped Greek philosophy, theater, and civic life. Myth was not escapism, it was instruction, a guide for living in harmony with the world. Greek mythology also explored transformation: physical, emotional, and spiritual. Daphne turned into a tree to escape Apollo. Arachne, after challenging Athena, became a spider. These stories revealed deeper truths: escape from pursuit, punishment for arrogance, or the power of creativity. Metamorphosis symbolized change as destiny. The gods often reshaped mortals, rewarding loyalty, punishing defiance. In myth, identity was fluid, boundaries thin. Transformation was not just magic, it was metaphor for growing, learning, or paying the price for who we are. The myths were also cautionary tales about desire. King Midas wished that everything he touched turned to gold, and soon couldn't eat or touch his daughter. Phaethon demanded to drive the sun chariot and burned the earth. These stories warned against greed, recklessness, and ambition without wisdom. Even love was dangerous. Orpheus lost Eurydice by looking back. Greek myths understood the human heart, its beauty, and its folly. They offered no easy answers, only reflections of our deepest longings. Greek mythology wasn't limited to gods and heroes. It explained natural phenomena. Why do seasons change? Demeter's grief for Persephone, abducted by Hades, causes winter. Her joy at her return brings spring. Thunder, Zeus's wrath. Echoes, the voice of a cursed nymph. Volcanoes, the forge of Hephaestus. Myths gave meaning to storms, stars, illness, and fate. In a world without science, myth provided logic, and even today, these stories still echo in how we speak, fear, and wonder. Greek mythology also shaped ancient theater. Tragedies performed in Athens drew directly from myth. Stories of Oedipus, Antigone, and Agamemnon weren't just entertainment, they were civic rituals. Audiences confronted fate, justice, and morality on stage. Playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides used myth to explore law, duty, and the human condition. Watching these plays, citizens wrestled with their own beliefs. Myth wasn't distant, it was immediate, emotional, and political. Through theater, the gods stepped onto the stage of human life. Many myths featured quest journeys through danger toward truth or redemption. Perseus braved Gorgons. Theseus entered the labyrinth. Odysseus crossed the sea and underworld. These paths symbolized more than travel. They reflected life itself. Trials built strength. monsters tested courage. The goal wasn't just survival, but transformation. The Greeks believed that wisdom was earned, not given. Every quest mirrored the journey of becoming fully human, flawed, tested, but resilient. Through myth, the Greeks mapped the inner world of the soul. Among the most tragic tales is that of Icarus, who soared too close to the sun. His wax wings melted, and he fell into the sea. His father Daedalus had warned him, but ambition drowned out caution. The myth endures because it's universal. The fine line between aspiration and arrogance. Icarus is a symbol for dreamers, and a warning to all who forget their limits. The Greeks believed that striving was noble, but ignoring wisdom brought disaster. Another unforgettable myth is of Sisyphus, cursed to roll a boulder uphill forever. Each time it neared the top, it slipped back down. His punishment was endless, meaningless labor. Yet in this myth, philosophers found metaphor, the struggle of existence, the repetition of life. Albert Camus called Sisyphus a symbol of human resilience. Greek myth embraced both absurdity and dignity. Even in despair, there was defiance. In telling Sisyphus's story, the Greeks revealed the core of perseverance. Not all deities were Olympians. The Greeks revered countless lesser gods and spirits. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, stepped aside for Dionysus but remained sacred in every home. Hecate ruled magic and crossroads. Nyx, the night, was so ancient and powerful that even Zeus feared her. Every stream had a naiad, every tree a dryad. The world was alive with divine presence. Mythology wasn't only grand, it was intimate. The sacred lived in ordinary places, too. This divine presence shaped how Greeks lived. Offerings were made at sunrise, prayers whispered at doorways. Farmers asked Demeter for fertile soil. Sailors prayed to Poseidon for calm seas. Even decisions like marriages or battles were guided by omens and oracles. Religion was practically a contract with the gods. Honor brought blessings. Neglect brought ruin. In every corner of life, myth and worship intertwined. The gods were not just characters in stories, they were daily participants in human fate. Delphi was the heart of divine guidance. There the oracle of Apollo called the Pythia sat, atop a tripod, inhaling sacred vapors, speaking riddles. Kings, generals, and citizens came from across the Greek world to seek her advice. Her words were cryptic but decisive. Entire wars were launched or avoided based on her prophecies. Delphi wasn't just spiritual, it was political. The oracle shaped history. The Greeks believed fate spoke through her, and her voice echoed with divine consequence. Mystery cults offered deeper, secret knowledge of the divine. At Eleusis, initiates reenacted Demeter's search for Persephone, promising enlightenment and hope for life after death. These rites were highly guarded, never fully revealed. Participants described the experience as transformative, a glimpse beyond the veil. While Olympian worship focused on public ritual, mystery cults appealed to the soul. They gave comfort, especially in the face of mortality. In myth and in mystery, the Greeks searched for eternal meaning. The myth of Persephone explains the seasons. Hades, god of the underworld, abducted her. Demeter, her mother and goddess of harvest, searched in grief. When Persephone was found, a deal was struck: she would spend part of the year below and part above. When she descends, Demeter mourns and winter comes. When she returns, spring blooms. This tale revealed nature's cycle as emotional and divine. It wasn't just weather, it was love, loss, and reunion playing out eternally. This myth also spoke to life and death. Persephone became queen of the underworld, ruling beside Hades. She was not merely a victim, but a powerful figure between worlds. Her story captured duality, death and rebirth, darkness and light. For the Greeks, death wasn't an end, but a transition. Myths like hers offered structure to the unknown. Through story, fear became narrative. Mystery became meaning. In Persephone, they saw the rhythms of existence, written in mythic form. The creation of humanity was credited to Prometheus and Epimetheus. Epimetheus gave gifts to animal speed, strength, claws, wings, but he forgot to leave anything for humans. Prometheus, ever the rebel, gave them fire stolen from the gods. This act empowered humanity with warmth, tools, and knowledge. But it enraged Zeus. Prometheus's gift marked a turning point. Mankind would stand apart, capable of greatness and ruin. The myth explains not just invention, but the burden of intelligence itself. As punishment, Zeus created Pandora, first woman. She was given a jar, or box, and curiosity. When she opened it, all the world's evils escaped: pain, disease, jealousy. Only hope remained trapped inside. This myth wasn't just about punishment. It reflected Greek views on suffering, gender, and fate. Humans, blessed with fire, now faced consequences. The tale of Pandora taught that with every gift comes responsibility. Even in a world of sorrow, hope still quietly endures. The Greeks envisioned human history in 5 great ages. The Golden Age was paradiseno toil, no suffering, just peace. The Silver Age brought decline. People lived long lives but were foolish and disobedient. Then came the Bronze Age, full of war and bloodshed. After it, the Heroic Age, where noble warriors like Achilles and Odysseus lived. Finally, the Iron Age, the present, marked by corruption, hardship, and despair. These ages revealed a tragic worldview. Mankind always falls further from divine favor. The ages of man weren't just timelines, they were moral commentaries. They expressed the Greeks' belief in decline, not progress. Ancient people saw themselves as distant from the gods, bearing heavier burdens than their ancestors. Heroes of the past were semi-divine. Their lives, though tragic, held purpose. Modern mortals lived in a fractured world. Yet even in the Iron Age, myths gave guidance. They taught humility, warned against hubris, and reminded mortals of their fragile place in the cosmos. Prometheus's rebellion didn't end with fire. His punishment became legendary. Zeus chained him to a lonely rock in the Caucasus Mountains. Each day, an eagle would tear out his liver. Each night, it grew back. This endless torment symbolized the cost of defying divine authority and the dangers of giving mortals too much power. Yet, Prometheus was also revered. He became a symbol of suffering for knowledge, a tragic hero whose pain uplifted humanity through progress and sacrifice. Only centuries later was Prometheus freed by Heracles, the mightiest of all Greek heroes. This rescue wasn't just mercy. It symbolized a new generation of gods and mortals reshaping the world. Prometheus's legacy endured. Poets and philosophers saw him as the father of civilization. His fire was more than flame, it was intellect, invention, and hope. Even while chained, he had given humanity its soul. In Greek thought, wisdom was earned, often painfully, through struggle against divine power. Greek mythology overflows with unforgettable stories. One is that of Narcissus, a youth so beautiful he fell in love with his own reflection. Unable to look away, he died staring into the water. Echo, who loved him, faded into nothing, her voice repeating others' words. This tale isn't just about vanity, it's about obsession, identity, and unreachable desire. Myths like this echo deep truths: the danger of loving illusions, and the loneliness of being unheard, unseen, unreturned. Then there is Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus, a gifted musician, descended into the underworld to retrieve his dead wife. His music softened Hades' heart, and he was allowed to lead her out on one condition: he must not look back. But near the surface, he turned. She vanished forever. The myth reflects human doubt and the pain of loss. It asks, can love overcome death? Orpheus's song still echoes in Greek tragedia, harmony of beauty, hope, and sorrow. Another haunting myth, Pygmalion, a sculptor who carved a woman so perfect, he fell in love with her. He prayed to Aphrodite, and the goddess gave his statue life. The story blurs the line between art and reality, desire and creation. It inspired countless retellings from Ovid to modern plays. At its core, it's about the longing to shape perfection and the power of love to transform what's lifeless into something human, flawed, and real. The myth of King Midas warns against greed. Midas wished that everything he touched would turn to gold. At first delighted, he soon realized the curse: food, drink, even his daughter turned to metal. Desperate, He begged the gods to undo the gift. The message is timeless. What seems like a blessing may be a burden. True wealth isn't in possessions, but in relationships, humility, and restraint. Myths taught ethics not through sermons, but through unforgettable mistakes. Phaeton, son of the sun god Helios, begged to be allowed to drive his father's chariot across the sky. Helios warned him of the danger, but he was not appeased. Phaeton lost control, scorching the earth and freezing the oceans. Zeus struck him with lightning. The myth explains deserts and glaciers, but also pride and recklessness. It is the story of a young man who tried to prove himself too soon, too fast. Like Icarus, he flew high, fell hard, and left a scar on the world. Daedalus, a brilliant inventor, built wings of feathers and wax to escape King Minos' prison with his son Icarus. He warned Icarus not to fly too high or too low. But Icarus, thrilled by flight, soared toward the sun. The wax melted, and he plunged into the sea. The myth is a parable of ambition, youth, and balance. Fly too low, you sink in mediocrity. Fly too high, you burn. Wisdom lies in the middle path. Greek myths also spotlighted powerful women, not just goddesses, but mortals who defied expectations. Atalanta outran every suitor, refusing marriage unless bested in a foot race. She joined the hunt for the Caledonian boar, proving herself among male heroes. Yet even she was tricked by golden apples tossed by Hippomenes. Atalanta's story celebrates strength, independence, and the tension between freedom and love. She was no damsel, but a warrior flawed, clever, and deserving of her own epic. Medea, a sorceress and granddaughter of the sun god, helped Jason win the Golden Fleece. She betrayed her family and fled with him. But when Jason abandoned her for another woman, Medea's vengeance was horrifying. She murdered their children. Her myth is dark and divisive, a tale of loyalty, love, and rage. Was she a monster or a victim? Greek myths rarely gave easy answers. They dared to explore extremes of emotion and consequences of betrayal. Goddesses in myth represented every force of nature and human emotion. Athena, born from Zeus's head, was wisdom incarnate, clever, strategic, and composed. Artemis roamed forests, protector of animals and maidens, fierce and untamed. Hera guarded marriage but was consumed by jealousy. Aphrodite embodied love and beauty, yet stirred chaos. These divine women weren't passive. They commanded, punished, protected, and rivaled gods. Through them, the Greeks explored the power, mystery, and unpredictability of femininity and divine will. The underworld was not hell, but a realm of shadows ruled by Hades. Souls crossed the river Styx. Guided by Caraneph, they had a coin for passage. Judges decided their fate. Heroes entered the Elysian fields. The wicked were cast into Tartarus. There, eternal punishments waited. Tantalus stood hungry in water he couldn't drink. Sisyphus rolled a boulder endlessly. The underworld mirrored life's moral reward, punishment, and the inevitability of death for every soul. The concept of fate, or moire, ran through every Greek story. Even gods were bound by it. The three fates, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropospun, measured and cut each life's thread. Heroes could delay fate, challenge it, curse it, but never escape it. Achilles knew his destiny and still charged into war. Oedipus tried to avoid his prophecy and fulfilled it. Greek myths didn't promise control, they revealed limits. Knowing fate didn't free you, but it made your choices matter. Oedipus's tale is the most tragic example of fate fulfilled. Warned he would kill his father and marry his mother, he fled Corinth only to unknowingly murder his true father and marry his mother, Jocasta. Upon learning the truth, Jocasta took her life, and Oedipus blinded himself. The myth explores identity, truth, and guilt. Sophocles' version shaped tragedy forever. Oedipus was noble, smart, and doomed, reminding us that self-discovery can destroy as much as it enlightens. The story of Antigone, Oedipus's daughter, also speaks to fate and defiance. After her brothers killed each other in civil war, King Creon forbade burial for the rebel Polyneices. Antigone disobeyed, believing divine law above mortal law. She was sentenced to death. Her moral courage inspired generations standing for conscience over power, even in the face of death. Antigone's myth asks, when laws conflict, whose law do we follow? Her sacrifice became a symbol of civil resistance. Greek tragedy thrived in Athens, performed during festivals honoring Dionysus. Playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides turned old myths into dramas that challenged politics, ethics, and belief. These plays weren't just entertainment, they were public reflection. Audiences wept, raged, and questioned. Myths gave shape to human suffering and divine silence. The stage became sacred ground where the Greeks asked, why do the innocent suffer? What is justice? And is wisdom worth the pain it brings? Euripides reimagined Medea not just as a sorceress, but a betrayed woman driven to rage. After helping Jason win the Golden Fleece and bearing his children, he abandoned her for a younger bride. In vengeance, she murdered the bride and her own children. Medea's myth is horrifying, yet deeply human. It explores betrayal, identity, exile, and the fury of love turned into hatred. Even today, her story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about loyalty and revenge. The Greeks also imagined stories of hubris when mortals dared rival the gods. Arachne claimed she was a better weaver than Athena. She wasn't, so the goddess turned her into a spider. Niobe mocked Leto for having only 2 children. Apollo and Artemis killed all hers. These cautionary tales warned of arrogance. To overstep divine boundaries was to invite destruction. Myth was a teacher, showing that pride, unchecked even if true, was the fastest path to downfall. The Greeks also believed in transformation literally. Myths were full of metamorphoses. Daphne became a laurel tree to escape Apollo. Narcissus turned into a flower after looking at his own reflection. Actaeon, after seeing Artemis bathing, was turned into a stag and torn to pieces by his dogs. These myths symbolized change, punishment, and escape. They connected people with nature and spirit. Transformation was not just magic, it was a way to explain emotion, consequence, and the fragility of the individual. The concept of metamorphosis shaped Greek thinking about the human soul. They believed change was central to life, external and internal. Myths captured these shifts in form as metaphors for love, grief, trauma, and fate. Even gods changed shape. Zeus often did so in pursuit of mortals. Transformation symbolized consequences but also renewal. In myth, becoming something else was sometimes punishment, sometimes salvation. It blurred the line between man, beast, and god and reminded listeners that nothing remains fixed forever. The natural world in Greek mythology was full of individuality. Rivers had sons, mountains had daughters, nymphs danced in forests and oceans. Every tree might contain a dryad, every wave a sea spirit. This wasn't romanticism, it was respect. The Greeks believed that divinity flowed through nature. To cut down a sacred tree or desecrate a spring was to incur the divine wrath. These beliefs shaped their way of life. Myth made the environment sacred, reminding people that they were guests in a world full of gods. The underworld in Greek myth wasn't hell, it was the destination of all souls. Hades ruled with Persephone, who spent half the year above with her mother Demeter and half below. This cyclical descent explained the seasons. When Persephone rose, the earth bloomed. When she fell, the world withered. The underworld had regions: Elysium for heroes, Asphodel for ordinary souls, and Tartarus for the wicked. It was a moral map of the afterlife-ward, forgetfulness, or eternal punishment. Some souls endured eternal torment for crimes against gods. Tantalus, who fed his son to the gods, stood forever hungry, fruit just out of reach. Sisyphus, who cheated death, rolled a boulder uphill eternally. Ixion, who lusted after Hera, was bound to a spinning wheel. These punishments were more than tales, they were ethical instruction. Actions had consequences. Immortality didn't protect one from justice. In Greek myth, divine law was absolute even when the gods themselves were flawed. Heracles, or Hercules to the Romans, was the most famous demigod. Hated by Hera from birth, he suffered deeply, killing his family in a divine-induced madness. To atone, he completed 12 labors, slaying monsters, capturing beasts, and even descending to the underworld. His story is brutal and redemptive. In death, he joined the gods on Olympus. Heracles embodied strength, suffering, and eventual salvation. His myth reminds us that pain, if endured with courage, can lead to transcendence. The heroic age in myth is filled with demigod half-mortal, half-divine beings caught between worlds. Perseus, born of Zeus and Danae, slew Medusa and rescued Andromeda. Bellerophon tamed Pegasus and defeated the Chimera. Theseus braved the labyrinth and killed the Minotaur. Their stories were full of triumph and loss. They were admired for courage but never escaped tragedy. The Greeks knew that greatness came at a price that even heroes fell. These tales warned against pride and overreach. As philosophy rose, the literal belief in gods faded. Thinkers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle examined truth, ethics, and the soul. Myths became symbolic. Plato used myths to teach morality and metaphysics. Aristotle analyzed tragedy through mythic structure. The gods were no longer rulers but metaphors. Yet even as belief shifted, the stories endured. They were kept alive in plays, paintings, and poems. The mythic imagination evolved, but it never disappeared. It adapts to every age. As Greece declined and Rome rose, myths traveled and transformed. The Romans adopted Greek gods, giving them Latin names. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, Ares became Mars. But the stories remained intact. Roman poets like Virgil and Ovid reinterpreted them. Myths were no longer just sacred, they became literary. In this shift, mythology became timeless. It was no longer bound to temple rituals. It moved into the realm of imagination, preserved by poets and artists. Virgil's Aeneid told of the Trojan legacy. Aeneas, who survived Troy, was called to found Rome. His journey echoed Odysseus's, but it served a new purpose: to link Roman greatness to divine destiny. Ovid's Metamorphoses, meanwhile, wove hundreds of myths into a single narrative of change. He told of Daphne turning into a tree, of Narcissus falling in love with his reflection, of Pygmalion's statue becoming flesh. Change, both physical and emotional, became the new central theme of mythology. In Ovid's world, nothing remained static. Gods transformed mortals, and mortals became stars, stones, or beasts. These stories were no longer just about divine justice, they became psychological allegories. Echoes became sounds. Narcissus was consumed by vanity. These myths explored identity, obsession, and transformation. Roman audiences didn't just revere these stories, they engaged with them. Thanks to Ovid, mythology transformed from sacred history into an eternal mirror of the human soul. As the Roman Empire expanded, Greek myths spread as well across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. They became a common cultural currency. Educated citizens were expected to know them. Artists painted them. Playwrights reimagined them. These stories were no longer tied to ritual, they were part of language, metaphor. Calling someone Hercules or Achilles had profound meaning. Myths became landmarks of courage, tragedy, beauty, and betrayal. But the rise of Christianity changed everything. Pagan temples were closed. Statues of Zeus and Apollo were destroyed. Myths were rejected as idolatry, yet they never truly disappeared. Christian thinkers like Augustine denounced the gods, but classical literature still circulated. Myths, hidden in manuscripts, survived in marginalia and were revived in the Renaissance. In monasteries and universities, even when scripture reigned, the old stories slept, waiting to be awakened again. And awaken they did. The Renaissance rediscovered Greek mythology with passion. Artists like Botticelli painted Venus rising from the sea. Michelangelo sculpted gods with divine power and mortal sorrow. Writers turned to myth to explore love, death, and human dignity. Myth became a source of beauty, not blasphemy. As Europe rediscovered reason and emotion, Greek myths provided both structure and soul. They became symbols once again, this time for art, philosophy, and poetic truth. In the 19th and 20th centuries, mythology found new life in psychology. Sigmund Freud saw Oedipus as a blueprint for inner conflict. Carl Jung saw myths as archetypes, patterns embedded in the human psyche. Myths weren't just stories, they were inner truths. Heroes represented the self, monsters the subconscious. Every journey, battle, or transformation became a map of the mind. The Greek myths weren't just old tales, they were keys to understanding ourselves. Even now, Greek mythology permeates modern culture. In books, movies, games, and television shows, we reconnect with the gods. Percy Jackson trains with demigods. Wonder Woman descends from Olympus. Hollywood reboots Hercules. These retellings reimagine the ancient world, but they retain its essence. The gods are imperfect. The heroes are torn. The stakes are cosmic, but personal. That's why they endure. Because no matter the setting, these stories are still ours. In education, Greek myths teach more than stories. They develop imagination, morality, and empathy. Children learn about courage through Perseus, caution through Icarus, and consequences through King Midas. Myths are used in literature classes, in psychological discussions, and in art criticism. They are universal building blocks for storytelling. Whenever we talk about someone having an Achilles heel or pursuing their golden fleece, we are unknowingly invoking thousands of years of mythical heritage. Their endurance lies in their flexibility. Myths change as we change. The same story can be heroic or tragic depending on how it is told. Is Medusa a monster or a victim? Prometheus a rebel or a savior? Every generation reshapes old stories to reflect new values. Feminist retellings reclaim women's voices. Queer interpretations find identity in transformation. Myth is not static. It lives, breathes, morphs. That's why it still speaks to us across the millennia. G.H. And at their core, Greek myths are human. Despite their divine attributes, the gods act like us. They fall in love, they envy, they betray. Heroes struggle, suffer, and fail. No character is purely good or evil. Everyone is flawed. Everyone aspires. They reflect our fears, hopes, and contradictions. Whether it's Odysseus's homesickness or Orpheus daring to love after death, these are not alien stories. They are deeply, painfully familiar. G.H. Greek mythology is not about answers. It's about questions. Why do bad things happen to good people? What does it mean to be noble? What is the price of desire, pride, defiance? These stories don't offer a simple moral. Instead, they invite reflection. They make us feel uncomfortable. They force us to see the consequences of our actions. They challenge us to think. In this, they are not just old, they are timeless. They remain relevant by remaining unresolved. Look around you, Greek mythology is everywhere. In NASA naming spaceships after Apollo or Artemis. In the wings on Nike sneakers. In the sirens that lure us into marketing. In zodiac signs and moon missions. In every epic fantasy, superhero movie, and chosen one trope. Myths live in our language, our culture, our art. We no longer need temples, they have moved into our stories, our dreams, and the very symbols we use to explain the world. From chaos to the cosmos, from the Titans to the Olympians, from tragedy to triumph, Greek mythology charts the entire arc of the human imagination. It gives us monsters to face, gods to interrogate, and heroes to follow. And yet, after all this time, it refuses to die, because we still ask the same questions. We still wrestle with fate. And we still dream of gods who, in the end, are simply reflections of ourselves. In modern psychology, Greek myths help us understand the human mind. Freud used Oedipus to study family dynamics. Jung viewed mythological figures as archetypes, universal images that live deep in our subconscious. We all carry echoes of Narcissus, Hercules, or Cassandra. These characters become tools for understanding grief, ambition, identity, and loss. They live in dreams, fears, and hopes. Greek mythology is more than just literature. It is a mental map for navigating the soul. Artists have drawn inspiration from Greek myths for centuries. Painters like Botticelli, sculptors like Michelangelo, poets like Keats, and filmmakers like Ridley Scott have told stories of gods, heroes, and monsters. Myths offer boundless visual and emotional power. They can be tragic, romantic, or thrilling. From Renaissance ceilings to Marvel movies, the gods live on, reimagined for the times. Art keeps mythology alive, not in dusty scrolls but on glowing screens and vibrant canvases. As the ancient world gave way to Christianity and empire, mythology evolved. Temples crumbled, but the stories remained. Christian writers denounced pagan gods, but often borrowed their structure and symbolism. Angels replaced the Olympians. Saints fought dragons, just as Greek heroes once did. The mythic impulse didn't disappear, it transformed. Even as religion changed, the thirst for meaning, symbol, and story continued. After all, myths speak the language of the soul, not just the mind. Today, Greek mythology inspires more than just scholars and artists. It shapes pop culture. Books like Percy Jackson, shows like Hercules, and games like God of War reintroduce these myths to new generations. They may change the details, but the essence remains: a struggle for purpose, power, and place. Through these modern retellings, mythology doesn't just survive, it evolves. Kids learn about Athena through cartoons. Teens explore Hades through indie games. The cycle continues. Why does Greek mythology endure? Because it reflects what it means to be human. It clothes philosophy in fantasy, truth in metaphor, and emotion in epic. It makes the invisible visible: desire, fear, rage, ambition, all painted on the canvas of gods and heroes. Mythology is not dead. It lives in every story we tell, every battle we fight, every journey we begin. It teaches, warns, inspires, and reminds us that nothing is truly new. So we return to where we began, not with the gods, but with chaos. From the formless void, the cosmos, history meaning emerged. Greek mythology is a cycle of creation, destruction, and rebirth. As long as people ask why, these stories will endure. They are not just myths of the past. They are mirrors of the present and whispers of the future. Myths live because we continue to dream, and in that dream, they live forever.